in case you are hungry or in case you really have to take a break and take a meal after you watch the show. But anyway, let's go deep and talk a little bit about it, Jarvis and Grant. It's the pitching staff, right? So you could go down the whole laundry list. I'll make a football analogy, right? When Kirby Smart said just last week that ultimately, in his duration of now, I think 7 seasons at the helm for the Dogs, he's never had an injury list this long. And you kind of feel like that looking with the Braves almost like every day. Gosh, who's going to go on the IL? You know, we had Max Fried go on the 15-day, Charlie Morton go on the 15-day. And then you could really, really just go down the list of Colin McHugh and Nick Anderson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we won't bore you with the list. Grant knows the list and Jarvis knows the list all too well. But the question is, and it's a look back before we look ahead, but the question is, Grant, do you ever look back at that trade deadline point and say to yourself, man, with all of this kind of decimating this pitching staff, maybe the Braves should have kind of sort of gotten somebody?
I'll be honest with you, I don't, because I look at the guys that got traded at that deadline, and let's just point a few things out. And I got into this on social media and have for basically the last 7 or 8 weeks.
I'm sure.
What do you have to choose from? I mean, I understand, like, okay, well, this guy's not doing well. I want anybody else, because different is better. But that is not necessarily the case, because we can go down this list. You weren't getting Justin Verlander from the New York Mets. They're not going to pay him to play in Atlanta. Same thing with Max Scherzer, and Max Scherzer's hurt. So that's a moot point as it is. You take those two guys off the table as I think what would have been the most coveted starters you can get outside of Jordan Montgomery, who was dealt from the Cardinals to the Rangers and has pitched well. Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, Jack Flaherty, and the list goes on for some of these other starters have pitched rather poorly in their new cities. I mean, Lance Lynn looked pretty good for the Dodgers in a handful of starts, and then it kind of reverted back to being home run prone and not being able to cover the innings. So I pointed this out on X yesterday. Look, is there any difference between what Bryce Elder's doing and what they're doing? Actually, probably so, because Bryce Elder's actually contributed to what you've done this year, and you need him to figure some things out. I don't think it would be better to have a different guy getting lit up like a Christmas tree down the stretch, or potentially in a start in the postseason, just because you wanted somebody different than Bryce Elder. And you weren't going to pile up 3, 4, 5 extra starters just in an attempt to have more than you could possibly need in the postseason. Rosters just aren't built for that kind of thing. You have to have a bullpen, and there are limits on how many pitchers you can carry. So to make a long story short, this is a road that the Braves have been down every postseason since 2020, trying to figure out this rotation. They leaned heavily on rookie pitchers in 2020, and then got to the point in the NLCS where A.J. Minter was making a start against the Dodgers. Then in 2021, it was Max Fried, Charlie Morton, and Ian Anderson carrying the load. Charlie Morton breaks his leg in the first game of the World Series. Atlanta still found a way to get through it. And then last year, a sick Max Fried and Spencer Strider coming off injury, that compounded the Braves' problems. And they weren't the club offensively they were a year ago that they are this year. So I don't really worry as much about Max Fried's blister issue. It's something I think is manageable, but you hope that it is something that subsides with some time off. Missing Charlie Morton, though, that's something I think the Braves may have to get a little bit creative with how exactly they're going to fill that void, particularly if it goes beyond the division series.
Right. And I think then if you look at it as a whole, kind of going back to something you said, Grant, if we're being honest about it, when the Braves made their World Series run, maybe Grant did, so I'm going to say we as in Tanitra, maybe did not know at the time that the night shift they became the night shift, right?
Right.
So what this crew could do the same thing. Yeah. We could have a night shift 2.0. And like you said, we could have somebody that just steps up to the plate from that pitching rotation like a Bryce Elder. Who knows? Maybe he only needs to figure it out just a hair. And like you said, hopefully you get a good run with Max Fried being able to get the blister situation taken care of in a timely manner. And then you kind of go from there. But another thing that you said was most important, and Jarvis, this really is probably going to resonate with me as we begin to look at these guys and watch them now that the magic number is down to 1 so that they can have home field advantage throughout the National League. And then, of course, World Series. I think it's 3 is the magic number? 3?
It's 2. I think it's 2, yeah.
2. Woo-hoo.
2 throughout. Yeah. All the way to the World
throughout. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So they're down to 2 and then they're down to 1. That's right. 2. They can get it within the next 5 games, Jarvis. But I love what Grant said, which is for what you may lack here and there in that pitching rotation, or what might make you shake or tremble or be triggered, the offensive firepower that maybe wasn't there that could have sustained you past the Phillies, you've got it now. So you've got so much more to offset than maybe you did last year when you had some of these challenges.
Yeah, I agree. And just to kind of touch on, going back to the trade deadline really quickly, I think that, I've gotten to the point now where I trust Alex Anthopoulos wholeheartedly. Like, there are not many general managers in the city of Atlanta professional sports that I can say that. And Alex Anthopoulos is definitely one of them. He's the guy that I say, okay, yeah, man, like, whatever you say, whatever you say, whatever you feel, like, go with that. Like, because it's come time and time again when it comes to these big decisions as to whether or not you're going to make a move. And we talked about it leading up to it, leading up to the trade down. I was just like, okay, like, all right, here's what we have coming back. Kyle Wright, Max Fried, those guys are coming back. You got Bryce Elder, who's an all-star. So why would you even question him in the first place? At that time of the season. So it's just a lot of decisions that he had to make. I felt he made the right ones, and like that whole night shift 2.0 piece. Like, he got some nice arms, at the trade deadline as well. We talk Joe, you talking about Joe, not Joe Jimenez, but Brad Hand, Joe Jimenez as well. So like, you bring in guys like that who've been really solid to you on the second half, not so much lately in the month of September, but those guys can catch fire at any moment, and because we've seen it, right? We understand that this is what they're capable of. So I think that when you have those weapons going in now, granted, when it comes to Charlie Morton and Max Fried being on the IL as we speak right now, I mean, of course, I'm concerned. But I feel like I trust Alex Anthopoulos enough because he's built this roster. He constructed his roster for moments like these. And I think that the Braves will be perfectly fine. And especially when you have this lineup buzzing like it has been, especially with guys like Kevin Pillar starting to come back last night, and also Marcell Ozuna continuing with the double off the wall. So I think that it's just the way this lineup is currently constructed, somebody is going to be on fire enough to be able to carry this pitching staff until they get healthy.
And it doesn't just have to be one guy. I think that's one of the things that really speaks about the Braves. And I've heard every member of the club, whether it's Ron Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, Austin Riley, I mean, pick some, Ozzie Albies, all of them don't feel the pressure that, if I don't come through here, then, it's not going to get done. That couldn't be further from the truth with the 2023 version of this Braves club. If anything, I think it takes some of the pressure off of these guys. And we've seen the improved approach, less strikeouts, more home runs, which is crazy to think about a club that hit 250 a year ago. But that's where we are. And nobody typifies this more so than Ronald Acuna Jr., who has elevated his game to levels I don't think we even knew were possible, but he just continues to show us how great he is. So this is a lineup that I think, to bring it all home, is one that can help back up this pitching staff in a way in which we have never seen a Braves lineup be capable of doing what this lineup can do.
Grant just makes me feel so much better about my life as a Braves country. But I don't fan out Grant about many of our teams here in Atlanta, but I grew up as a Braves fan. And so, I will tell you, that's why I said I was chomping at the reach of TBS. So that's why I was like, gosh, and, I've heard you, of course, on other outlets as well. But I wanted to kind of talk to you today, and I wanted to kind of hear from you as well and kind of get your thoughts on it because, I had a little angst. Now, the good news, however, is before we wrap, last night I did not have angst. Sixth inning, I was still like, okay. All right, 6-up. So that goes back to what you were saying about the firepower that we still have confidence in, like this team is never out of it. And also to kind of take from our first pitch segment, but also from another one of our shows, two things. Number one, they are the cardiac kids on 10, and any one of them can be the cardiac kid who actually wins it for you every night. And number two, on another one of our shows, we say, are you concerned or confident? And so, you can be concerned here and there with the Braves, but ultimately speaking, because you've got not only Alex Anthopoulos and what he did to get the Braves here, but what Brian Snitker does night in and night out in the decision-making and the strategy that he puts forth and everybody that surrounds him, from Rick Kranitz all the way down to Uncle Ronnie, Ron Washington, and all points in between. That's where you get your confidence. So, love that, appreciated, and now I feel more comfortable to say, hey, this is why we tell you guys, don't stop here at the Braves party. You guys need to check out the Braves postcast because Grant McAuley, Jake Mastriani, they are awesome. They give you guys so much amazing analysis. So each and every night, after each and every Braves game, they are here to break the game down to you and tell you not only what you need to know about that game, but also how it impacts the rest of the Braves run down the road.